Tom Summers with Coldwell Banker, and I'm a licensed residential real estate agent in the state of Minnesota, mostly working in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area for those of you that don't know me. I've been doing a whole series of videos and will continue to do so for buyers and sellers. And I usually only do one a week, but there's some really disturbing information that I learned here over the last few days that I think needs to be talked about right now. So, in doing so, I wanted to give you some insight if you are one of the people who's thinking about eventually moving out of the state of Minnesota, either permanently or establishing a residency in Florida or California, Texas, wherever else you're going to go and live there in the winter and here in the summer. There are things that will impact you from a tax standpoint that you need to discuss with your tax preparer. So let's get into it. The first thing is in 2016, the legislature in Minnesota changed the law. Up until that point, my understanding is that if you could be in a specific state for at least 180 days or more, you could claim residency there and you would not have to pay state tax, income tax here in Minnesota. Well, that's changed. Now, with the rule changes and the laws, they are saying that that's not necessarily the case. So they're going to look a lot deeper. If they don't feel like you are truly a resident in a different state, you can't just vote down there or register to vote. That's not enough. And the time of 180 days is not enough. They could look into a lot more detail of your finances and banking accounts, where you're working, and all these other things to factor in to make the decision for themselves whether you're truly a resident of a different state or if you're still a resident of Minnesota. For information, I will paste the link to this particular part on the Minnesota State website so you can read for yourself. But so you know, it's a Minnesota Administrative Rules 8001.0300, subpart 1 through 10. It goes in great detail as to what you have to be aware of if you're going to try and make a move like this, because it can severely impact your finances and your taxes. So not only do you want to educate yourself by learning about these law changes, you also want to talk with your accountant and your financial planner to make sure that you know exactly where you stand. The other piece of it that is even more troubling to me is right now, my understanding is that California and New York, because they are losing so many residents, are trying to push through legislation that would tax you if you're going to leave the state, almost like a wealth tax. They will look at everything that you have from an asset standpoint and then determine how much they believe you should pay if you actually want to leave the state to live somewhere else. Personally, I think this is horrible. It's unconstitutional. It'll probably get shot down. But if it gets pushed through in one state or more, it's very possible that it could happen here. I talked to somebody inside of the state of Minnesota that works in finance, and they said that they have heard rumblings already that this is a possibility in the future. So if you're going to move, you may want to move sooner rather than later, or at least consider your options and really stay on top of all of these developing laws and rule changes, because the last thing you want to do is plan 3 to 5 years down the road, get ready to move, and then all of a sudden you find out that, well, wait a minute, now we owe some type of exit tax to move out of the state. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing. And I'm hoping to God that cooler heads prevail and that somebody will stop this type of thing from happening, because it affects every one of us. As Americans, I feel that I should have the right to move to any state I want, whether it be South Dakota, Florida, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Nevada, wherever you want to go. So please, this is something that you need to share with anyone that is a friend, family, coworker that you've heard talking about the idea of eventually retiring or moving to a warm climate or somewhere else for work. Make sure you know what your rights are and what the laws are so that you don't get trapped all of a sudden before you know it. And now you're spending a bunch of extra money to cover your costs that you didn't expect. Normally, I don't get this frustrated by something like this, but this is something that I think is absolutely wrong and completely out of line. So please do your research. Again, like I said, I will add the link at the bottom of this video in the text part so that you can access this information directly. Check with your tax accountant and make sure that you know what your rights are and where you stand. Thank you so much. Have a great week.